Hershey is a small city in the state of Pennsylvania, in the northeastern United States. A city of around 20,000 inhabitants, known throughout the world for one single thing: chocolate. The Hershey Company, founded at the end of the 19th century, transformed that small town into the world capital of milk chocolate. And for more than a century, Hershey has been a place where the air smells different, where the streetlights are shaped like chocolate kisses, and where tourists arrive as families to visit the theme park and the factory, and to buy bags of sweets to take home to all parts of the world. In that city of chocolate and deep America, Christian Pulisic was born on the 18th of September, 1998. And from the very first moment, his life had two things that do not always go together: a country he loved with all his heart, and a sport that country did not yet quite know how to love. Football in the United States is a complicated love story. It is the most widely played sport among American children, with millions of boys and girls playing in youth leagues across the country every weekend. But in popular culture, in the media, in the daily conversation of Americans, football has occupied for decades a secondary place behind American football, baseball, basketball, and ice hockey. It is the sport that immigrants brought with them, the sport of the neighborhoods where English is not always the first language, the sport that Americans play as children, and that many then abandon when the sports the culture considers more important arrive. Christian Pulisic grew up in that context, but he also grew up with something that changed everything: a family that truly understood football. His father, Mark Pulisic, had played semi-professional football in the United States and in Europe. He knew the game, loved it, and recognized in his son from very early on the kind of talent that cannot be manufactured or fully taught, but that appears already formed in certain children, and that only needs the right environment to develop. The Pulisic family built that environment: the first touches, the first movements, the basic understanding of spaces and team play arrived in the family home's backyard, on the artificial grass fields of Pennsylvania's youth leagues, with a father who knew what he was looking at and who also knew that what he was looking at was something uncommon. At 7 years old, Christian was already clearly the best of his age in any youth league he played in. At 10, the family made the first of the great decisions that were going to define his career: moving to Michigan, where his father had a job as a coach at the University of Michigan, and enrolling in more advanced development programs. At 13, another even bigger decision. Michigan was no longer enough either. The road led to Europe. It led to Germany. It led to Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund has one of the best youth football academies in the world, a club that has produced Götze, Hummels, Reus, the great players of German football over the past 2 decades, and that has a philosophy of developing young talent that combines technical demands with a creative freedom that not all German clubs allow. When Dortmund scouts saw Christian Pulisic at 13 in a trial in Germany, what they saw was enough for the club to make a quick decision. Christian Pulisic went to live in Dortmund at 13 years old, alone, or almost alone, because his father was with him for a time during the transition. But the daily reality of that 13-year-old was to live in a foreign country, learn a new language, adapt to a culture completely different from that of Hershey, Pennsylvania, and compete every day in one of the most demanding development environments in world football. For any teenager, that combination would have been crushing. For Christian Pulisic, it was the environment where he grew faster than anywhere else in the world could have allowed him to. He learned German. He absorbed the culture of European football, and the talent he had brought from Pennsylvania kept growing, refining itself, acquiring the tactical sophistication and technical maturity that elite European football demands. In the Dortmund Academy, competing with young Germans who had been in that system for years, Pulisic did not merely survive. He stood out. He made his Borussia Dortmund first-team debut in January 2016. He was 17 years old. He became the youngest American player to score in the Bundesliga. And in that moment, something changed in American football. Because suddenly there was an American boy, not the son of European immigrants, but a boy from Pennsylvania with the accent and culture of deep America, playing in the German Bundesliga and doing it well, very well. Better than anyone had imagined an American could do in that setting. The impact in the United States was immediate. The sports media, which for decades had ignored football or treated it as a minor curiosity, began paying attention. The supporters who had followed the European leagues from the shadows, with the feeling that that football had nothing to do with their country, suddenly had one of their own in there. Someone who spoke like them, who came from a city they could have visited, who represented something new and different in the history of American sport. They called him Captain America. It was not a nickname he chose. It was the nickname the country gave him because it needed one, because it needed a way to name what that boy represented. The first truly American player to compete at the highest level of world football. The first who not only participated, but made a difference. The first in front of whom Europeans had to take an American player seriously, not because he had a nice story behind him, but because on the pitch he was good. Very good. In 2019, Chelsea of England paid €58 million for him. 58 million for a 20-year-old American. Another figure that was hard to believe. Another declaration that American football had produced something the European market genuinely valued. But the years at Chelsea were the hardest of his career, not for lack of talent, not because the doubts about his level turned out to be well-founded, but because of the combination of factors that in elite football can destroy a career that on paper should be perfect. Injuries, instability on the bench, the rotation of managers that at Chelsea during those years was so frequent that the club had 5 different managers in just over 2 seasons. Each manager had a different idea about where and how to use Pulisic. Each injury pulled him out of his rhythm at the moment he was beginning to find it. It was a frustrating and exhausting cycle that tested not only his body, but his mind and his confidence. There were brilliant moments. The FA Cup in 2021, where Pulisic was decisive. Individual matches where he showed everything he could be when circumstances allowed him to express himself. But there were also months of silence, of injury, of the bench, of that feeling of never being able to find the rhythm that great footballers need to maintain their best level. And then came AC Milan. In the summer of 2023, the same club that a few months earlier had signed Santiago Giménez as a striker also took Christian Pulisic as a winger. And in Milan, under the lights of the San Siro, something that had been waiting years to wake up finally woke up. The first season at Milan was the revelation those who had always believed in him had been waiting for. 15 goals and 15 assists across all competitions. A performance that was not only good in statistical terms, but that visually, in the way he played, in the energy he transmitted in every match, said that Pulisic had found the environment he needed to be everything he could be. Milan gave him confidence. It gave him continuity. It gave him the stability Chelsea had never been able to offer him. And Pulisic responded with the best version of himself that European football had seen from him until then. In the United States national team, Christian is the captain, the number 10, the player that young Americans set as their phone wallpaper and whose videos they watch on loop on social media. He is the bridge between American football and world football, the living proof that that bridge can be built, that a boy from Hershey can arrive at the San Siro and not only survive, but shine. The generation surrounding Pulisic in the American squad is the best that country has ever had. Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Gio Reyna, Yunus Musa. Players trained in Europe, accustomed to competing in the Champions League and in the best leagues in the world. A generation that does not carry the inferiority complex the previous one had to bear, that does not arrive at major tournaments with the mentality of participating, but with the mentality of winning. The 2026 World Cup is played at home, in MLS stadiums that in recent years have grown in quality and attendance in a way nobody would have predicted a decade ago. At the MetLife Stadium in New York, at the Rose Bowl in Los Angeles, at AT&T Stadium in Dallas. before audiences that are no longer only the traditional supporters, but a new generation of Americans for whom football is the favorite sport, the one they followed from childhood, the one that gave them figures like Pulisic to admire. The United States have never gone beyond the quarterfinals in a World Cup, and that was in 2002 in South Korea, in circumstances many consider exceptional. The 2026 World Cup played at home is the opportunity this generation has been waiting for. The opportunity to show that American football has arrived to stay in the conversation of world football. That the most powerful country on the planet can also be powerful in the most popular sport in the world. Christian Pulisic is 27 years old at that tournament. He is at the best moment of his life as a footballer. He has the experience of having played in Germany, England, and Italy. He has the maturity of someone who knows failure and who knows that failure is not the end, but simply the lesson before success. And he has, above all, that spark he always had since he was a boy in Hershey, kicking a ball in his backyard while his father watched and understood that what he was seeing was something American football had never seen before. This is the 10th episode of Legends of the World Cup. We have traveled through 10 countries. We have met 10 players. We have heard 10 stories that are in reality a single story told 10 different ways. The story that talent has no passport. The story that work and sacrifice and love for a game can take someone from anywhere in the world to the biggest stadiums on the planet. The story that football, more than any other sport, has the capacity to make the world seem smaller and more beautiful at the same time. From Rosario to Barcelona, from São Gonçalo to the Santiago Bernabéu, from Bondy to the Stade de France, from Pulheim to Leverkusen, from Funchal to Madrid, from Madrid to Doha, from Lagos to Naples, from Kawasaki to San Sebastian, from Mexico City to Rotterdam, from Hershey to Milan. 10 different roads, one same ball, one same World Cup. See you on the pitch.